All right. Thank you. Well, I want to say welcome to everyone who is here today, and especially I'd like to welcome Nicola and Stephanie. They are connecting with us today from Denmark, and it's a long way away. But what a wonderful opportunity to be able to talk and to see each other in this day and age. This probably wouldn't have been possible when I was growing up, but yeah, it's good, and I praise the Lord for this. I haven't seen you guys in a little while. We didn't do a meeting last month, but I thought it would be a good opportunity to talk about sharing the good news, the gospel and the truth, and methods of sharing, and how knowing the truth and knowing the law and knowing the human being, how that could influence the way we share with others. And in particular, I'd like to touch on two aspects of sharing, because we share with different people, we share with perfect strangers out there in various circumstances. Maybe sometimes we door knock, or we might be at the supermarket and some opportunity comes around and we share. But then we also want to share with our families, and I'd like to touch on those aspects, because is it always the same, the way we share? Is it different because we know the person? All these various nuances of sharing, and especially from the perspective of the law, and from that context of knowing the law and knowing the human being. So I know that we live in a world that is hungering for the knowledge of the truth, and we do want to be the hands and the feet of Jesus. We want to fulfill his purpose, and that this is what we'd like to discuss this afternoon. So before I go ahead with the heavier questions, I'd like to ask both Nicola and Stephanie to introduce themselves and to tell us a little bit of their experience. I'd like you, ladies, to tell us how you've come to know your purpose that God has given you, and how were you introduced to the truth and to sharing this truth, and yeah, if you could share a little bit with us this afternoon, that would be great.
Yeah.
I think somebody is maybe still not muted. Anyway, I came to know about the Law of Life through Stephanie, but she refuses to start, so I start. She came home from a trip to Germany. She was staying there for a while, and she came home at Christmas, and she said, I met this man. You need to meet him, or you need to talk to him. And this was my introduction to the Law of Life through Dr. Horst Müller. I was at the time, and have been for much of my younger days. I'm still young, I think. Since I was maybe around, I think it started already when I was in school, when I was a kid, maybe around 7th grade, when my parents were divorced. I started to not be so happy. And when I went to high school, it got worse. And then when I went to university, it got even worse. And I called my mother one day, or maybe she called me, and she was asking how I was doing. And I realized, and I said to her, well, I think I may be depressed, mother. And I realized after some years that the church really wasn't able to help me out, figuring out how to deal with this. And
They will come
neither
and watch this testimony.
medical,
Beautiful girl.
Esther, could you please mute yourself, Esther? Thank you.
yeah, okay.
Go
And
on.
so I realized things were not going to change because I was trying everything and it didn't really work out. I was trying exercising more, eating the right things, going to bed at the right time, as we all think can cure everything. And nothing of that was really working. And at the same time, I believe when I was around 21, I thought now is the time to start reading my Bible. I wasn't raised in a very conservative home, so at my home, I was probably, at least during growing up, the most interested in religion in the family. Probably my sister was also, but we didn't really talk about it. And when I was 12, I very much decided to be baptized. I had no idea what it meant to follow Jesus, but I was very sure that I wanted to. And so my parents didn't want to deny me this because they heard of other families where the kids wanted to be baptized very young and then the parents refused and the children turned their back on the church. So they didn't want to risk this. So they had a pastor coming and studying with me. And after some time, I was baptized when I was 12. So I was very concerned about religion, and I very much wanted to know the truth always. And I always wanted to know what was right and what was wrong. Of course, for the wrong reasons, but this is how we start. And I think around 21, I realized my life was not at all what I believed a Christian life should be. And I started thinking that I had no idea what was in the Bible. And I was at the time dating a guy who said he was from the church, but really his life was not at all like this. And his beliefs were not even, he didn't even know if Jesus was a real man on earth or if heaven existed. And I thought, my sister was starting to be a little bit strange and very conservative in her ways. And she was not happy with my boyfriend, I tell you. So I thought, okay, everyone has their own opinion of what is truth. And my mom was leaving the church and I had a bit of a crisis. And I thought, I don't know what everyone else believes, but I have to know what I believe. And so I broke up with my boyfriend and I isolated myself a little bit. And I thought, Lord, now I need to know you. I need to know what I believe. And I started searching in my Bible. And over the years, I came to some things that seemed contradictory, and the church was preaching one thing, and I read something else in my Bible, and I read something else in Ellen White, and I couldn't really make things come together. And when Stephanie then came home and she said, I met this guy, and she brought him also to Denmark after a while, and he was preaching some things that for the first time I realized this is the only thing that makes things come together. He was teaching about that we sin without no choice. Especially, this is one of the points that I really understood better. And I thought, this is what I've been looking for, because I looked at my life and I thought, everyone wants to do the right thing, but look at me, I cannot. And also he was teaching about the nature of Christ, which I knew if you go to the liberal church, I know they are wrong. And I knew, because now I was coming in the more conservative part of the church, and I knew they had no clue what they were talking about. And for the first time, I thought to myself, this is the only thing that makes sense. It makes everything come together. There's no contradiction anymore. It makes very perfect sense. And so after a while, I realized I need to know this better. I guess it's you now.
Stephanie?
Yes. Well, yeah, I grew up in an Adventist family with this one. Yeah. And I was from very early on in life, I was already sick as a child, and was struggling with depression throughout my entire childhood, or almost my entire childhood. And at the age of about 17,
Yeah.
I was at the point where I was staying home from church because I didn't see any point in going to church one Sabbath day. And I got to go, I went to the internet and sought out some sermons on the internet instead of the church. And that led me to a Danish page we have that says that's called Listen to God, where there are sermons on it, and that led me to Audioverse and to all these more conservative parts of the Adventist Church that I didn't actually really knew existed, because I was grown up in a very liberal church. And I had no clue about prophecy seminars and all these things. And suddenly I found something that at least made a little bit more sense than what I had grown up with. And I entered into, at that point in my life, I then entered into the conservative church. And it helped me out quite a bit for a period of time. Because when you do change external factors like your diet, your exercise patterns, all these things, it might help you a little bit for a while. But it does not solve your heart problem. And the conservative church, of course, also led me to the very strict belief that sin is a choice and that I can just do differently. Because at least the belief in the conservative church in Denmark mostly is that Jesus, he was just like us. There was no difference between us and Jesus. He was our example, and we can be just like Jesus. We just have to believe that, like right away you take a decision and then you are free in all your decisions and you can just do the things. And of course, you then get into problems when you find out that, and when you are a very strict person already, if you are a very great judge, you can very easily get into problems. So what happened was that for a while, because of all the changes I made in my life, I became somewhat better. But then reality set in when problems were brought in my life, and I couldn't live up to the pattern that was that of course also was my interpretation of what needed in order to be good enough. And then you end up very quickly in self-condemnation, and then you are in an even worse place than you were before you entered the conservative part of the church. Yeah, because then you get even more trouble. And I then at some point I decided to go to Bible school, because I went to all the conservative meetings,
like
all the youth camp meetings and stuff like that. And I had pledged a vow I would go to Bible school, and I sought to get into a very conservative Bible school in Norway twice, was rejected twice. I was very upset about it. Couldn't understand that God would not let me go to that school. I needed to be there. Yeah. And but he didn't. And instead, the second summer I got rejected from it. A place in Germany, also a conservative institution, that teaches about lifestyle issues and stuff like that, diabetes and all these things. Instead asked me if I would come and be their student. And I didn't really want to go to Germany, but better than not going to Bible school at all. So I went to Germany, and in Germany, after 3 weeks, my grandmother died, and it was very sudden. She was a very active woman. She was not even 70 years old.
She was more like a teenager than I was. And she was in, seems in perfect condition. And within 3 weeks of me leaving the country, she got diagnosed with meningitis. I forgot what it's called. Infection in the brain. And I didn't make it home from when I left, and she was like, perfectly teenager, doing all the housework, doing gardening, doing everything, working for the secondhand shops and all these things. From when I left, there was 3 weeks, and she died. And she had been like my mom. I had been living in her house. She was like my mother. And I got into the severest depression I ever was in. And it did not matter what they tried. Of course, I was at a health center, so you should think I had an advantage. And I was trying in the beginning, they put me on the program for free also at the institution I was at. And I tried, I tried to do everything, and the people around me, I tell you, they were praising me because I was doing everything in order to get better. I was doing everything in order to get better.
Religiously.
And nothing religiously, I tell you, and nothing helped. Nothing helped. And in the end, I was so angry, so frustrated, because I was in the end almost not able to get out of my bed. I was so severely depressed that I cannot even explain it. But I just wanted to die. I just wanted it to stop. And but by God's grace, there was a Bible worker on that institution that after all the doctors had they gave up on talking to me. Because I had given up on trying to follow their things, because it just didn't work. It just didn't work. And I was getting angry, and it was not pleasant to be around me, because when they told me, oh, you can just, and when you get to that point, you just don't want to hear about, you can just decide anymore, because you have just tried everything. And there was one of the young female doctors, and I think I actually made her cry at some point, because I was so mean to her, because I just got so angry and so frustrated. But the woman, by God's grace, had pity, and maybe also she also has a sinful nature, so she might want to flee from me. So she said, I have this Bible worker, and I know you don't like men, because I really don't like. I didn't at that point. I didn't like men very much at that point in my life. But this guy, he was like this tall, scrawny guy, big smile, and there was just nothing scary about him whatsoever. So I agreed to talk with him, and I just immediately, I loved the guy. I loved the man. He was such a kind man, and he said, you remind me so much of my little sister. I still remember. I haven't talked to him for years, and I hope he's doing very well. But the thing is with this man is that this man, he said, Stephanie, I know, and his English was, by the way, very, very bad, but we could communicate a little bit. But he said, I know, Stephanie, these people here cannot help you, but I tell you, I have a friend, and I have never seen a person change so much in my life as this friend I have. And he's a doctor, and I know he can help you. And I agreed to go and see the doctor, even though I don't like men, because I really like Christian. Christian, he was good enough. He didn't give me the creeps. So he took me to Dr. Miller, to Horst, and within 1 hour, my life started to change. I did not get half of what he said, but just a few things that he told me. From getting those few things he told me, within, I think, 3 days or something, I was better. I, of course, I did not hear all his messages at that point in any way. I didn't. And it would take a very, very long time till I actually got to search more into the things that he was talking about. But the little bit of information that I got from my conversation made me so much better that I thought to myself, there must be something about this. So I invited him to Denmark. And I introduced him to my sister. And I said, everybody needs to hear this, because if he can change things so radically within an hour, there must be something to this. Yeah, I shared it with my sister. And my sister also, she was much quicker in actually listening than I was, because I was, apart from the, it helped me out, I was still a very great little god, thinking I always knew better. And I was a very young lady. So, the young ones, they always know better than everybody else. So it would take me some life experience to actually seek out and really get to the point where I was able to throw out the foreknowledge I had. And it would take me many years of actually suffering under self-condemnation to come to the point where I could say, I might have to consider that the doctor is actually right and I'm the one in wrong. And the thing, of course, that gave me the greatest issues was the foreknowledge, or the wrong knowledge of choice. And every time I let go of the idea that there was a choice, I always got better. And then when I had gotten a little better, I thought, yeah, well, I go back now, because, there's an angry God up there that I need to please. And we try one more time if we cannot get in line with him so that he will give me eternal life. And got in very much trouble again. And it had to go back and forth for apparently 10 years before I came to the conclusion that what I am doing is ridiculous. It is absolutely ridiculous. But I'm very grateful for the experience. I think that even though it has taken me this long to acknowledge that I cannot just do, that I need a power from without me, and I need help, I have gotten an understanding for how difficult it is for the conservative people that we encounter. I was not in the conservative church for a long period of time. But even the little time I was there, and with the nature I have, I saw how difficult it can be. And hopefully at some point it will lead to me having great patience with those who still claim that they have free will. And help many people that I had to take it the hard way. Yeah. So I thank God for that today, and I also thank Him for the fact that I can now recognize that that the will is not free, but it is bound. But there is a what do you call this? Solution. There's a solution to the issue, and you can get free, and I'm very grateful for that. Yes.
Yes. Amen. Thank you for sharing. I know that both of you have somewhat medical education behind you. So it's not like you didn't, probably even that made it harder to some degree to accept that just changing the way of thinking, because science these days is all based on the brain and the frontal lobe, and even within the church we believe that the frontal lobe is the God, pretty much.
Absolutely, but I think in many ways I had an advantage because I went to medical school for a very short period of time. But it was a very, very short period of time that I went to medical school. So I didn't, and the thing is, I also had the advantage of being married to a doctor. So when you are married to a doctor, you quickly find out how little the doctors know. It is really incredible. And that gave, I believe that gave me a very great advantage. Because yeah, I do believe it is very much harder with a lot of education when you have drilled it so much in. Also because when you go to medical school, I tell you, they don't give you a lot of time to think about what you read. They don't. It is just, you just have to stuff the things in and repeat what they say.
Yes.
There's no time for questioning the stuff that we actually get in. Yeah.
And you, Mikola, you went through medical school, so, or at least
dentistry school. But of course, for the first few years, we study the same things as the medical students. I think, though, I mean, I met Horst when I was still in the beginning of the studies.
Okay.
I think I started when I was 21. No, yeah, maybe 21, because I had a few years of Sabbath years, they call it here, for working and earning money. And so I met Horst about 3 years later when I was around 24. But by the time I was already very depressed, and what happens when you are very depressed is you don't remember things very well. And I always did very well in school when I was younger. I never had to do much homework. I just, talked my way through everything. Even though I'm not the most brainy of the two of us, Stephanie is a little bit faster than me, but I was still good at, getting around things, and many things were not so troublesome for me. If I had to think a little bit more, it was a little bit harder, but many of the things you don't have to think so much about them. You just remember them and spill them out on the right time. And I think that really didn't work for me anymore when I got to uni. For the first time, I didn't get the best grades. And I also had the idea, because we all want to please God so well. So whenever I had more free time, I would spend it on doing things with the church. And so I didn't have so much time for studying. And when I tried to, and I also just didn't spend a lot of time on it because I would fall asleep over my books and I wouldn't be able to remember anything anyway. And so I did what I could, of course, and it's not like I didn't learn anything at all, but actually it wasn't so difficult for me because I also think around the time when Horst came, in the beginning he was in another part of Denmark than where I lived, so we went to the part of Denmark where I grew up, because he was coming there. But then later he came to Copenhagen where I was studying. And so he was staying in the building where I was staying, and we ate breakfast together. And one morning we were consuming this this kind of fruit. It's a very small berry or something that hawthorn, I think it's called, or something like
hawthorn berry, yeah.
Yeah, like a little orange berry or something.
Jam kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And there was this lady who brought them, and they were dried, and we were tasting them, and I wasn't particularly liking them. And Horst was like loving them or whatever. And I thought I'll just be a little bit smart and tell him about all my great knowledge. I don't know, it was not a very conscious thing, of course, but I just said, no, sour things are not so good for your teeth. And I mean, if you know Horst a little bit, he was like, how do you know that? Can you prove it? And so he was provoking me a little bit. And I don't know if it was that alone that had the great influence, but I thought to myself, can I prove it? And I think it took me also a little bit of time, at least in my own area, I think, of expertise, or what do you call it? Like in the dentistry area.
Yeah.
It took me a long time to give up the ideas, or it took me longer time to give up the ideas. But actually on the medical part, it didn't take me so long. I mean, I decided I don't have to hang on to any of this except I prove it. I think maybe in 2020, which is then, I don't know, almost 10 years later, I decided to throw out everything I know except I can prove it. So at the time, it was not a very conscious thing when he was in Denmark, but I followed everything I could find of preaching and teaching that he did. And, he said many times that his study book was the Ministry of Healing. And I started reading Ministry of Healing. I mean, my book of Ministry of Healing is falling apart because I've read it so much. And many of the things he said, I could find there. Even though there were some things I still didn't understand, I saw it also in the patients I had. I thought about it when I have sometimes the patients in school. I thought, when you talk to these people, what are they more concerned about? Their teeth? No, they're not. I mean, the teeth is really the smallest problem. And I just little by little realized, I didn't have this strong conviction that medical field was right and the teaching of the law was wrong. But I think in 2020, when the lockdown came, I had the idea, a little bit like when I started reading my Bible when I was 21, I thought, this is the time I need to know it for myself now, because I thought I was a little bit too stupid to understand it. I was listening to his Sabbath school lessons, and the quarterly lessons always, if you go back to when he started them, because I was following them from the beginning when he started out about it. And they always started with some very lawful angle to things. And I just thought, this is too brainy for me. I don't know what he's talking about. So I always liked when we came to the end of the Sabbath school lessons. And it's the same when he had the seminars, the Law of Life, and he had all this understanding of law and nothing has energy from outside and blah, 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 or the energy in itself. And I thought, oh, this is a little bit difficult. And I always went to the end of the seminar. Sometimes I even saw them in reverse, started with the part about love and then went back. And I really didn't understand it fully. But then in 2020, I realized it doesn't really help me that Horst understands. And I thought, now I need to know. And I decided that anything I find in the medical field that doesn't line up with the idea of law, I have to throw it out because I know the law is right. I looked at nature and I cannot see how it can be any different. So it hasn't been so much of a struggle for me to throw out the old ideas of medicine, I think. Of course, something hangs on and you're not aware of it. But when I find it, I feel very delighted to throw it out. I think it has been more of a struggle to throw out my religious beliefs than it has been difficult to throw out my medical beliefs.
Absolutely.
Actually, yeah. And also maybe because I was in the conservative church, I think a little bit longer than Stephanie. I was attending a very conservative church, and I spent a little bit more time around people with these beliefs also. And all my doctors all my friends were doctors. Yeah, all my conservative Adventist friends were doctors. And actually, I wanted to be a doctor, but I never got into medical school because my grades were too poor. I had too much fun in high school. But I think maybe that was a real blessing, because maybe it would have been more difficult to let go of some of these things had I been in school with the others. And also I'm very grateful because I finished earlier than them, and now I'm working and some of them are still studying. I mean, what's not to like?
Sure. Well, praise the Lord for your experiences and the way he has led. So along the way, what did you learn that is the purpose of God for his people and for you personally. And of course, we can extrapolate that to all of God's children. What is the purpose of God for us, for our lives?
Well, by law, we must take to give, of course. But I think before we will be able to give this gospel, because that's, of course, is what everyone needs to do. You know, some people say, oh, I'm not a preacher, but we have to be preachers, all of us. We may not be standing on the pulpit, all of us, but we may be standing before loads of people and kings and high people in this world. So everyone has to be able to give an account for what they believe. And I think this is what I realized when, yeah, only 4 years ago. Isn't it sad? I mean, I've been in the church for all my life, and only 4 years ago, I realized being too stupid is not an excuse. I have to know.
Hey, I'm twice your age and I have the same experience, so don't.
Yes, okay. Well, I'm not trying to accuse anyone, but I just realized I mean, you grow up and you're just so not used to think for yourself. And when I look at it, it makes me it makes me very unhappy. I mean, I grown up just thinking that I don't need to have an opinion about anything. You know, when I was younger, I didn't have an opinion about anything. I'm very bendy because I like harmony. So if anyone thought something, I would be, okay, we do that. If someone thought something else, I would be, okay, we do that. I had a lot of friends. I had no enemies because I would just bend over, do whatever they want, you know? I mean, but then it changed a little bit when I got into the conservative church, because now I thought I knew the truth, and now I have to stand every time they say something, and I was very unhappy because I like to agree and I couldn't agree anymore. So I didn't realize that I had this very hot temper before I was so-called converted, but now I had an opinion, and now everyone would be mown down by my opinion. So, but I realized at least that we have a job to do. We have people to reach, but before we can do that job, we must learn something. We have to learn to think for ourselves, which is really the hardest part when you are in the habit of having someone else think for you all the time. Now you have to think for yourself, and you have to trust that God will teach you all things. And you are to never again take upon yourself an opinion because another person have it. Yeah. Not because Horst has it, not because I have it, not because anyone has it, but because you found it out yourself. You can never lean upon another man again in your life. Mm-hmm. And I think this is the greatest challenge, but it is also the greatest blessing. I've never found anything in my life so interesting than thinking. When I started thinking for myself, my world expanded like never before. Like never before. And I still have the tendency that I heard something and I take it over. But when I see it, I kill it immediately. I hate it. So I think we cannot give a gospel before we have learned what that gospel contains. So we have got to start thinking for ourselves and learning from God.
Amen. So would you say the starting point of sharing is actually knowing it yourself very well?
Exactly.
You cannot give what you don't have.
But they go together, you know. I mean, even in the years when I didn't understand the law very well yet, I shared what I did understand. I have been in close contact with Horst. He's been like a father to me. And half of the time, I maybe didn't understand everything he was saying, but the things I did understand, I shared with everyone who would listen. And it helped me to know a little bit more. And I think even it helped me also to hang on to the idea of the law and the understanding of some of the things, because I used what I knew how to use when I was with my friends and when we had Bible studies in my room on Fridays and stuff like this. And so I found also after 2020, and I started understanding the law for myself, I spent a little bit of time understanding. I sat down, I said, okay, now I make a drawing of the law. And I started thinking about, so how does this work? Or how does this work? And every time a problem came up I couldn't solve, I thought, oh, so how does this work? No, everything needs to take, everything needs to give, everything works in a circuit. And it's really not so hard to start on that in my experience. But then we have this Telegram group, and new people were coming, and even people that had heard the law before, but maybe like me, didn't think for themselves. And they would ask questions. And I decided in the beginning, I didn't like to say, I don't like to make mistakes, and I don't like to be corrected. So I didn't say anything, because I thought if I say something, Horst will correct me. But he's very kind. He didn't. he barely ever, because he knows how I will react. So I thought to myself, I will just pretend like Horst does not exist in this group. And I spilled every time I saw a question. I thought I will not be the one who asks the questions. I will be the one who answers the questions. So every time someone puts something up, I put myself to think about it until I have a good answer. And I learned so much from writing in that group. I mean, it's been the greatest blessing in my journey of learning. Of course, I also had a few sermons, and I did some PowerPoints there, and making the PowerPoints make me think. I mean, then you invent new ideas, or you don't invent them, but you have new ideas and you develop on these, and it helps you also to learn. So sharing and learning goes together, but you got to know how the law works before you can share how it works. So you got to put some effort. I mean, I think giving this message will be, we have to spend our greatest effort ever. We have to think and pray. And I mean, I like a place Ellen says that, I don't know, being a Christian will take all power that a person has. There will be crying, there will be praying, there will be using all the strengths we have to be able to live for God. But it's very nice. I mean, how else can you use your powers in a noble way? I think it's the most wonderful thing, that whatever power we have, we put it into the work of God.
Thank you for that. So can we share if there is no need expressed?
No. Oh, I didn't hear that. I'm sorry.
Can we share if there is no need expressed to us?
Yes, exactly. Well, we can share love. We can share love. We can, but love gives freedom. And the thing is, one of the most important things that we need to understand in order to be profitable workers is we need to have an understanding of the human nature. We have to have an understanding of the law. We have to have an understanding of the human nature. And then we need to know ourselves. And this is one of the most difficult things, because the heart is so deceitful. But we have to have a basic understanding that the nature I am born with will always try to force the good upon others. You see, we have this idea in the church, especially if we come from the conservative part of the church. I believe that, you know, the evil looks evil, but evil does not always look evil. Evil can look very nice. It only looks and comes to look evil when we do not have the return we want. Yeah.
Yes.
But we have a tendency of wanting to force the people around us to do that good. And that is very, very evil. Very, very evil. So when there is no need expressed, and we go and we try to put our things on other people, we have to have an understanding for their nature. My nature wants to force, but
We've lost you. I can't hear you. I can't hear you.
Oh, yeah, I am here again. I'm here again.
Yep.
If you have if you have a person whose nature is to put force to do the good, but the nature also has a need for freedom, and you come and you want to force the other one, and the other one there's nothing that rises more that people will go against faster than when they feel forced.
Mm-hmm.
So
right.
if no need is expressed by God's grace, and we all are learning in this process, do not try to put anything on people.
Yes.
But I think it's also, I mean, this is one of the things that we're really just not raised to think for ourselves, because if we put ourselves in the shoes of the other one, who of us would like advice when we think we're not in need of advice? I mean, even maybe if you're a woman, you know, when you come and you complain about things to your husband, do you want him to correct you? No, you just want him to shut up and like what you say and listen, yeah? I mean, and these people that they are even less, I mean, I think they are less in need, at least in their mind, of course, of any advice. I mean, I don't like it when people want to give me advice and I haven't asked them. If I wanted advice, I would have asked, yeah? We just have to put ourselves in the shoe of another person and think to ourselves, would it be nice that someone comes and puts something on you that you haven't asked them for? I don't think so. I mean, I think what happens is we like to go before God and find people to rescue, but we want to rescue them not out of the right motive. I'd like to rescue them for my sake, either because I would like them in heaven or because I like stars in my crown. Yeah, because, you know, Ellen has this, I know from Stephanie, because she she explains to me very many times, you know, she was trying to rescue the people to be sure that she would go to heaven, because, you know, you're not going to go to heaven if you didn't give the message, yeah? But it's the wrong idea in our mind. I'm not saying that a husband should never correct his wife.
No.
But I'm just saying,
That's
when
right.
people are not asking us for help or for advice, it would be very wise to go to God and ask, how do I conduct myself around them? Because we have the idea that we haven't given anything, we haven't shared anything except we've shared doctrine.
Yeah.
But this is not truth. I mean, the truth is we give all the time. All the time we let out information. And that information can either come out of love, out of a motive that is for the other ones, for the best of the other one, giving him liberty and love. Or it can be from the motive that I do it because of my interest in the other person, yeah? So I spend a lot of time around people that I never preach to, people at my job, people in the church, friends from my church, because I know they have no interest in the Law of Life. I tried to share with them at some point and they were not so interested. And then we think, oh, now it's a waste of time to be around them. But this is judging them because we have no idea who will come around. I think my goal when I meet new people or when I am with people that I know I cannot share the law with right now because they're not ready for that, I think of it as an investment. Yeah, not an investment for myself, of course, because this would be the wrong idea. But I would like that if there is at all a chance that they will be in deep trouble one day, I want them to think of me as the first person they could go and ask for help, and they know that they can bring anything to me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
In a way that it would always be possible for them to come to me afterwards, just before they die, maybe. I don't care.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And even if they never do this, we only have such a long time of living. Why would I not use this time of living on loving everyone I can come to love?
Yes, I remember that was one of the things I talked with Horst about the first time I met him, because I was, of course, trying to force my goodness on my mother because my mother was not in the church. And he said, Stephanie, you have to think like this. If you only have this lifetime to love her, why not love her with all you have? Yes. God lets it rain on the good people and on the bad people. He gives to everybody without reservation. Yep. The only reason he only gives with reservation is the evilness of our heart. Yeah. So we
Yes.
give to everyone. We need to be the safe place. We need to be the place of no condemnation. We need to
Yeah.
be the place that people know, if I come to this person and I tell them of all the bad stuff that is going on in me, this will be a place where I will meet love, I will meet understanding. I will be safe to share these things. Yes.
Mhm.
And
So in
then,
this,
of course,
yeah, go
oh
on.
no, you are.
Now, I was going to
Uh,
say, in this context of, you know, waiting for them to come to us with the need, how do we then apply Acts 1:8, where Jesus says, go and share it with everybody?
But
Can you
sharing it,
guys please, yeah, mute yourselves, because it's interfering a lot with. And I do see two hands up. I'd say hold on to your questions and we will answer them at the end, if that's okay.
okay. The thing is, just like Michaela said before, the sharing, we are always sharing. Yes? We are always sharing. No matter where we go, we are always sharing in some aspect. Sharing does not necessarily mean that you are teaching people doctrines. Jesus also shared with the Pharisees, but he didn't run after the Pharisees and gave them doctrine. Yeah? So we need to understand that interpretation of scripture needs to be according to law. It needs to be for the other one I do it, not for me, not to get saved, not to fulfill some requirement of God, but because I have an understanding of his character and of who he is, so that I can share it with other people. I share with the people, I share the gospel with the people that I don't speak the gospel to also. Because the gospel gives freedom. It gives freedom to say, I do not want to talk to you about these things. And then the person who is within the law can respect that.
I think also it's a good idea. Sometimes we read things a little bit out of context and we don't think about the situation that they were in. I believe we're talking about Matthew 28, right? When Jesus sends the disciple out and he's leaving for, or maybe it's verse 28, doesn't matter. Yeah, but so he's leaving for heaven, and he's giving them their job description. Yeah. And I think sometimes we're forgetting, of course, they didn't know everything. They didn't know everything. We know that from Acts also, that they had a few days where they were all in despair, and then suddenly after 8 days, the Holy Spirit comes upon them, and now they can teach. But they had been with Jesus for 3 years. They had learned a lot of things, and often what happens is that we want to share before we really know what to share and how to share. And even though they were not fully educated, because they were not fully educated, but God sent his Spirit also on them. But he sent the Spirit in full measure, or maybe not in full measure, because in the end of time it will be like never before. But I think these they were a bit in a different place than we are right now. Not that we should not share, we should still share what we can. But when the Holy Spirit came upon them, I believe they had understood things that we have not yet maybe understood, at least about our hearts. And they were in a different, the Holy Spirit can only come when we are rid of this in full measure. It can first come when we're rid of this deception in our heart. So we have some hard work to do before we will be put to preach as they did. They had 3,000 people converting in a day. We will have this also, but it's right around the corner. It will be very, very soon. I don't think it will be years from now. I think it might even happen this year or next or next year, but it's not yet. So we should just take advantage of this time we have for learning instead of wanting to go and do. I mean, what I usually do, because Jesus didn't put himself also when he was on earth, he didn't put himself usually in situation where he had, now I preach, come and hear me. Yeah. He was led by God into situations and people were following him around. They were clinging to him like glue. And if people are clinging to you like glue, well, preach ahead. But we're just usually not in the same situation. So instead of learning how God leads and when it's a good time to speak and when it's a good time to think and be silent and maybe meditate about how to do things in the right way, we just burst out without thinking. And so I think this is a process of learning how God leads the situations. And I think the disciples were also told to go and sit down and learn some things and pray for some days before the Holy Spirit came upon them. And then they were going preaching. I hope it somehow makes sense. I'm not so developed in this thought, but to put it very straight, but I hope you get the idea of my point.
You have to have a message before you can preach a message.
Yeah.
And
we're still learning.
Yeah, we are still learning, and we still have to recognize that there's a lot of error in our hearts that makes it impossible for us to share the gospel in the right way. We share little by little now, but when the error is gone, that is when we will be profitable workers, like really profitable workers. Of course, in the time up to that point, we are learning and we are sharing with each other, but we never ever go into we should never go into the deception that we need to do for us. I can be satisfied with not doing if it's not about me, but I cannot be satisfied with not doing if it's about me, because if it is about me, then I need to push the other one to listen to me.
Or find a place where someone will listen to. This is also so, what happens in my church. They didn't want me to preach anymore. And after a while, they didn't want me to do the Sabbath school anymore. And the sinful nature just says, oh, it's fine. I can read in the Bible. Then you brush off the sand and you walk on. You find another place where they will listen to me. But it's all about me. It's not the right idea. So I'm very happy God helped me. And he helped me with my heart a little bit. And now I can be in my church just fine without preaching, because they don't have to listen to me. They don't have to hear anything I have to say. Why would I need them to? It's just about me.
I think
also
the
something
deception is not that they have to listen about me, but I have the truth, and the truth has to be heard. And therefore, I have to push the truth to be heard, no matter what, because they don't want
be like this.
Yeah.
I think it's different from person to person. I really like to be heard. But I think then we have to see, well, where does this idea come from? I mean, would God put force on someone to listen because I have to choose? No, he wouldn't. So it's still either about pleasing God or pleasing someone else. So we have to understand why we do what we do. And this is the difficult thing about the heart. It takes a bit of searching to understand why I do what I do. But so people can do the wrong for different reasons, but the root of the problem is always the same, that I am on top, I'm God, I know better. And this is, of course, something we have to eradicate from our way of thinking.
Can you expand a little bit on pleasing God? Why is it wrong to want to please God?
Because it comes from the idea that I can give something to God in order for him to give me something. Yeah. It is.
So it's almost like appeasing a God, like idolatry.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. It is. It is thinking that God is the problem, and I need to act in a specific way to get what I want what I need from him for myself.
Yeah.
This is what happens subconsciously. This is what gets us in trouble. Whenever the first thing we should ever know is whenever we come under pressure, when we feel pressure inside, we are wrong. We are in some way, we are trying to either please man or please God in order to get something from them. Yes? And this comes from the evil eye and not from the truth. If I am in the truth, I can be relaxed, even in a situation where I'm locked in a basement and there's no people to talk to, and I cannot go and preach the gospel. I'll be perfectly at peace because I know my Heavenly Father is in control, and I have no problems because I don't think that I need to go out and preach a gospel in order for me to get to heaven. Yeah. But because we are so much about ourselves and we have gotten used to so much this thought about us and that everything is about us, we act without thinking about why do we do what we do.
I mean,
What is motivation?
Look to the guy on the cross or the thief, and I mean, how much preaching did he get to do? I mean, he preached a little bit to his neighbor, but that's all. And the neighbor didn't take it, but he's still going to be in heaven. Yeah, I mean, I think we have to learn a little bit how to know how God does things instead of wanting to run ahead of him. I think this is, I mean, and also when just about a little bit about method also, when we see how, you know, sometimes we also just want to share, but in a way that people are not ready for it. I mean, when you look at how Jesus talked to the woman at the well, he didn't start by, you know, saying, you have 5 men in your life, let's take care of the issue. He found little by little a way to her heart, and he saw where people came from. Back then, most of the world around him was very religious, so it was not a difficult thing to start at a religious point. But we live in a world that's very, very secular. If you go talk to the heathens, well, you got to know how the heathens think, and you have to find out what is their problems and how can you, I mean, the law, the way it is taught today is very nice. It can be taught from different, you know, starting points. It can be taught from a religious starting point if you have to do with a religious person, but it can be, you can reason very well with people that don't know anything about God. And usually the people that don't know anything about God are much more easy because they will reason and think for themselves. Whereas the religious people, they find it much harder because they are taught from childhood that this is how things are with religion, and changing that mindset is just so difficult. So I think it's a little bit about learning to be gentle and thinking a little bit before we spill out what we really have an urge to say, because when we have the urge, it's not really coming out of the right motive. We have to think a little bit about how to do things in the smartest way. I think I like that idea. Jesus says we have to be mild as the dove, so meek as the dove. But we have to be smart or sneaky as the snake.
Why?
Not in a bad way. Yeah, I mean, we gotta be smart about the things and how we share things that we don't, of course, do it for ourselves, but that we do it in a way that people can understand, and that will not, you know, make greater distance between us. If I go to my mates from high school that are not religious anymore, and I share, oh, God is this, and because this is what I did in the beginning when I was 21. I was so excited. Now I know about God and this whole world that, you know, you can talk to him all the time, and I was so excited to tell them all about it, and you know, changing in lifestyle and everything, and these people are really not interested in any of that, and I just made a greater distance between us. But when I came to know about the law, God was very merciful. He showed me how I never have to push my religious ideas to any of my high school friends. And I have some relationship with them now, even though they know I'm very strange and weird. They love being around me because I never share my issues with them. I never share my problems with them. I never have an expectation from them that they should be like me, or, you know, I don't share my religious things with them. I just have an interest for them. And they like it very much. Everyone likes this. Yeah. So, and I know that one day they might be in trouble. I cannot know, of course, if everyone will come around, but I hope and believe that one day when they are in the greatest trouble, they will know they can come, because this is a safe place and I never push anything on them.
This is, of course, a learning process. This is a learning process.
Yeah.
It's
so we make mistakes on the
very
way.
difficult. Exactly, and especially with family. Family is the most difficult thing, yeah, because you want the family members to be converted, especially because if they are converted, then it makes your life much easier. Yeah, if they all behave in a nice way and are very harmonious and very nice, then you can eat them. Yeah, but we need to learn to give the other one freedom.
I mean, in our family, we have a very lovely story. My mother left the church some years ago. She still pays her tithes because just in case.
Yes.
But she doesn't really have anything to do with the church, and her idea in her heart is she doesn't know if God exists or not. I don't think you can call her an atheist because she still has religious opinions and stuff like this. And around the time when the lockdown became real and nobody could go anywhere, Stephanie and I, we were very much in panic. I think most people were at the time, and we thought, okay, we need to know how to explain these things. And Mom would come and talk to us, but we would like go in the corner and talk about it because we didn't want to be a part of it. And she felt very much outside, and we couldn't talk about anything because she thought we were so radical and weird because we didn't want to obey the rules and stuff like this. And we got smarter on the way and became more transparent with our mother. And it didn't make her think we were less of a freak. But after a while, she started to have an interest in what we believe. And she saw how the church reacted, especially towards me, because I was preaching in the church, and they forbade me to preach anywhere.
Yeah.
And the pastor wrote me an email, a very long email, and an analysis of my teachings. And he put a paper on the wall in Copenhagen that I was teaching false things. And I was very surprised. And of course, also in my heart, I was really not happy. And unfortunately, I spilled the unhappiness on my mother, but God used it for the good. And my mother was like, how can my little girl, who is so dangerous, be suddenly a danger to the church? And she was very interested to know what it was that I said that could make such a hassle everywhere. And I have been at least trying to be transparent with her. I talk about my mistakes, I don't share things that I am still struggling with, but I talk about the things where I see the sinful nature and explain to her how the sinful nature works. And sometimes, it's not an easy thing because sometimes she will use it against you. But it's good to know that nothing is ever against me. And a little bit and a little bit and a little bit, she learns and she listens and she's like, well, I like that part and it seems very logical, but this part I really don't like. And it's been like this for a few years now. And when we came home from Australia and New Zealand, I was walking one day to town and talking with her on the phone. And I came to realize that she had found every meeting that we had held and she would watch it. First, she would watch it with her husband, who's an atheist. And but he was not, maybe he was a little bit interested, but she wanted to watch it alone. So she put it on when he was not around and just really listen to what it was. And she was asking me a little bit and she said, I don't know about this. I have this strong still against the idea that what you think can make you sick. And I had the very nice idea because I had this, no, she likes the idea that what you think can make you sick, but she has a hard time that God puts the effect. This is a discussion that's been up and down for a while, if God allows the effect or God puts the effect, yeah, because only God has power to put effects as I see it. But he allows, of course, that who takes that energy or power from him will misuse it. So it's a little bit, when does he put it and when does he just allow someone to do what they want to do and stuff? And had this difficult thought that it was God putting the disease. But I asked her a question. I said, so don't you believe that God, or that you can get sick from what you think? And she was like, yes, she did believe that. she believes that much sickness comes from thinking wrong. So that far she can go. And you know, I'm discussing these things about God with a woman who just says she doesn't know if God exists. It's very interesting, yeah. Because we have a relationship, but it's dangerous for her to express what she thinks and has doubts about. She's allowed to. Of course, I made many mistakes and I got angry with her plenty of times. But still, we are open and honest about it, and I tell her when I'm wrong, and she comes then again to spill her ideas and questions and stuff. And then I asked her, but mother, who is the only one who can read your heart? Who is the only one who can read your thought? And she's like, oh, it's God. So if God is the only one who can read my thoughts, he must be the only one who could put the consequence. And she got it immediately. And when we were on, I went back from town, from the store, and on my feet to my house. And when she said, you know what, Mikla, I was going through these meetings and I saw Stephanie's testimony. And now I understand much better why she was like she was when she was a child and when she grew up and stuff. And in the end, she said, I think this might be a God that I could actually like. And she's not in the church yet. But she said, I think maybe the reason I left was because I didn't like him. Because she was raised like everyone else to think she has a choice. Yeah. I mean, all these ideas that she's brought up with made her flee away from God. So I don't know how my father, I mean, God knows, I hope. But I would like to hope for my father that he realizes the truth, not for my sake. Yeah. I cannot know about the rest of my family, but I have seen what God has done in my relationship with my mother. And also just in my mother's way of thinking. And if that can be done, anything is possible, I think. So we should not give up hope for our family members just because they don't see things the way we see them as it is right now.
Yes. And this is beautiful how organically it happens, how the Holy Spirit comes and slowly softens that heart. So I don't have to push for a commitment. I don't have to push for, you know, so come on, take Jesus because he's good for you. But give liberty and freedom and be there constantly ready to help.
That's the thing. Jesus is attractive, but people need to see the attractiveness of Jesus in us. Yeah. And the thing is, that will be shown when the error is removed. I also just, as an example, also just to show how not to do things. I will really share an experience from last week. You know, we are still in this process of learning. And last week we had a wonderful situation here in the house because Michaela and Florina was here last weekend. And we get to experience what we sometimes do when we are, you know, near to the people that we are closest to and that we are most dependent on. And it happens when my sister and I are together, you know, we get into a little quarrel sometimes and a little problem sometimes, yes. And the great thing was that my mother was present at this event. And what immediately, of course, happens when your children are not as harmonious as you would like them to be, is, of course, that you would like to change that. Because my mother, of course, like everyone else, has a need of harmony. And that is very understandable. But then in my great distress, I go into the thought, now is the time to help mother a little bit. So that everybody will become a little more harmonious for me. Yeah. So my mother is sitting beside me in the car, and we're in the car together, and she's complaining a little bit about this harmony taking place. And then I think to myself for some reason, not knowing what I'm doing, of course, I only see it afterwards. This is the time to help mother out. So mother, do you now see that you want your children happy for you? Yes? How do sinful nature react to accusation? Not very well. So mother and I now get into a controversy. Yes? Because clearly the woman cannot be so blind that she cannot see that she is doing it for herself. So, but who's doing the things for themselves here in this aspect? Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But I don't see it. I don't see it. And then the Lord gives me a little more help. Yeah. He helps me a little bit out because after, bickering with my mother says to me, but honey, when you now go and talk to your sister, if you cannot make her happy, please tell me, because then I would like to leave. I don't like to be around it. And the temptation to shove it in her face and show her, mother, can you not see it? I don't do it, and I don't do it. The reason I don't do it is not because I recognize how bad, how evil my heart is, and how much I want to win the fight. That is not the reason I don't do it. I will just say that it wasn't that good. What I do, and the reason I do not do it, or the reason I do not go into it, is because I condemn her. My heart tricks me, and I get into the thought, why should I at all point it out to her? Because she is hopeless anyway.
And she's really not.
And she's really not. And afterwards, after when, the things clear up, of course, I can, when the Lord helps me out, I can see, oh, Stephanie, when will you ever learn? When will you ever learn? So this is the reason that we have such a great emphasis on the first thing that we need. Of course, we need an understanding of the truth. I mean, that is fundamental. We need an understanding of truth. But what we also need very, very much is an understanding of ourselves and an understanding of our own weaknesses. Yes? Because the weakness is easy to spot. I tell you, it is so easy for me to see when my sister is trying to force something upon somebody else.
But how about when you are doing it?
But when I am doing it, I become so blind. And the thing is, afterwards, I'm going around and I'm thinking to myself, and I use time on that day, I'm in trouble much of the day, and I become so weak that I can barely stand on my feet and all of this. And I'm going around and I'm judging my mother, and I'm arguing, and I'm like, how can she be so incredibly blind? Yeah, I'm walking around in blindness, thinking about how blind my mother is. It is incredible, the deception of our hearts. It is incredible. And we really need to learn to see and to understand that whenever we get in trouble, we need to understand the problem is not outside. It is not the other people that I need to try to fix. I need to go and see, where am I blind? Where is the blindness in me? Because when I remove the blindness in me, then I know how to act and help the other one. Yeah?
I lost connection there for a minute, but yeah, so I didn't really get the last bits. But it is what it is. So I suppose
it's just that taking care of our own deception will help us much better to know how to share, when to share, and how not to judge the other one.
Yes, and how to help the other one. So that is for them and it is not for us. Because in this situation, of course, what was the problem all the time? The problem was never my mother. The problem was never my sister. The problem was that I wanted to fix them for me so that I would feel better. And that is never the correct motivation to do anything. Yeah.
Yes. Amen. And I think that is a beautiful summary of our discussion as to how we start to share why and what are the most important points in our sharing. And thank you so much for this time. I know it's Sabbath morning for you. I'm not sure if you are able still to stay a little longer for some questions.
We can stay as
long
long as you need us to. Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So, Nadine, if you want to stop the recording, or do you want to keep recording for